People hear about connected cars and they're very concerned that the data, which is obviously what's fueling the whole thing, is going to be hacked, or they're going to have a loss of privacy. I mean, do you think that's one of the barriers holding back deployment?
At the moment, perhaps it's not that clear whether it is. Obviously, it's a question of acceptance by the public. One element to ensure there is this sort of public acceptance is to make sure that consumers are confident that their data is handled safely. So really here, I think the two aspects for consumers to feel safe is for them to really feel like they're in charge of their data, that they're really in the driving seat. And that really they get to decide who they share the data with and for what purposes. So that's one aspect of the issue. And then obviously on a more technical side, it's really privacy and security by design is definitely something we get behind.
What could be done by policymakers to improve the prospects for connected cars?
Well, on one hand, obviously, and it's not necessarily a barrier, we need everything that's done in that area obviously needs to comply with existing legislation such as data protection, but it's not necessarily a barrier. We don't necessarily think it would prevent an efficient transfer of data from the vehicle, the consumer's vehicle, to the relevant parties, the parties that the consumer wants to share their data with.
And there's also the concerns about safety of the vehicle itself. I mean, people are afraid that it's going to be hacked. I mean, how do you strike a balance between swift and easy transfer of data and yet making it secure?
I don't think it's necessarily in conflict, the two issues. I definitely think the two can be worked on. At the same time. The two goals can be achieved. I don't necessarily think they're in conflict. And clearly, we're going back really to this idea of privacy and security by design, and we don't necessarily think that that prevents this principle of really the consumer being in charge of where his or her data goes.